Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Remko Rinkema, and you are watching Run It Back, the show in which we watch old school poker action, sometimes from 15 years ago, sometimes from just 2 years ago. And today I am joined by one of my friends, one of the guys that I've run into the airport the most on the international poker scene. It is Mr. Isaac Haxton. Ike, how are you doing? The logo is on screen. You know what we're diving into, so this must bring back some good memories. But first and foremost, how have you been?
I've been great, and yeah, absolutely does bring back some good memories. I'm looking forward to it. Wearing the same hoodie I was that day, I believe.
Oh, well, that can only bring even more good luck. To set the scene, Las Vegas, the PokerGO studio, that is where Super High Roller Bowl 5 took place back in the winter of 2018. Man, 2018 feels like a long time ago, especially given the year that we've all just been through. But the beautiful ring is on display as you go up against a bunch of killers at this final table. For those who are tuning in for the very first time, in this show, I am relying on your questions in the chat, on your engagement, and then I will ask everything that is relevant to this final table to Mr. Haxton as we break down his big win in this tournament. There is a ton of money at stake, $3.6 million for the winner. To date, still your biggest live tournament results of the $27.6 million in total career tournament earnings, which puts you right now 16th on poker's all-time money list. So clearly, we have a lot to discuss about this final table, and clearly there's a lot to be revealed because this is one of the toughest final tables I have ever seen, and I'm very curious. Thinking back of it now, are there certain things that stand out? Are there certain rivalries or battles that come to the top of your mind as you see the footage rolling?
It's a good question. I don't know about rivalries, but did play some interesting hands with Foxen over the course of the final table and did end up heads up with him, so that's certainly something that comes to mind. And then, well, I had Stevie on my right all day, and he's a good friend of mine, somebody I talk a lot of poker with. So always a certain unique sort of challenge to play against somebody who you've actually talked a lot of poker with, and you really each know how the other thinks. And then, yeah, I mean, everyone at the table is somebody I've played a ton of poker with for a long time and plenty of history with all of them. Yeah, it was a fun and interesting final table for sure.
Yeah, as we watch the interview between Maria Ho and Ali Imsirovic to kick things off here, I'm going to run through the names real quick here. We have Ali Imsirovic, Igor Kurganov, Adrian Mateos, Talal Shakerchi, Steven Chidwick, Alex Foxen, and yourself. So 7-handed final table, $540K guaranteed for the 7th place finisher. Let's just quickly go through these players one by one. What's your experience with Ali been over the years?
So out of this table, he is certainly the newest of the group. I think at the time in 2018, I was really just starting to become familiar with him. I think I maybe played with him for the first time in late 2017. I think my impression of him at the time was that he was a very kind of promising. I don't want to like condescend to him in any way, describing him as like young and new and promising and all that. But like as this was happening in 2018, I'd only known him for about a year, and I had a sense that he had improved a lot in that year that I had seen. He seemed like somebody who was really approaching things the right way and improving rapidly. And I think that that's been borne out since as well. In the couple years since then, I've played a whole lot with him, mainly online. And yeah, he has proven himself to be a very tough opponent for sure.
Steven Chidwick, you already touched upon. He's a good friend of yours. You have a lot of history with him. Alex Foxen, you also mentioned you guys have a lot of history and played a lot of interesting pots. What I'm also curious in is how do you feel about Talal? Because Talal, Mr. Raid a lot, he plays a lot online, but people still see him because he's older as, you know, oh, he must be a recreational player. How do you view Talal? Because I think he might get easily underestimated by the viewing public.
Yeah, well, I mean, he is an amateur poker player. He's a finance billionaire. and plays poker for fun, but he's a strong player for sure. Has been playing for a while, and you know, unlike some amateur players, he's really there for the competition, trying to play well. For some people, for some amateur players, the thing that's fun about poker is, getting together with some people and hanging out, having a good time, gambling, winning big, losing big, just having fun. Talal for sure is there for the competition. The thing that's fun about poker for him is challenging himself at a competitive endeavor. He takes it seriously, and he's a very smart guy, and for an amateur player, a very strong player.
As this format is the way it is, if you see something interesting, Ike, from this final table, please interrupt me and my questions, because I'm pretty sure you're going to see things that I missed, or you're going to remember moments that I wouldn't touch upon. For the people in the chat who are asking right now, is this live? Yes, Ike and I are live watching the final table from back in 2018. This footage is all available on PokerGO. All 3 days of this event are available on PokerGO. If you're new to PokerGO, please subscribe right now. Use the promo code HSP for $20 off your annual subscription if you are new to the show. And we have new merch, pokergoshop.com. Use my promo code REMKO, that's my first name, Remko, for 10% off your total purchase. We have high stakes poker hats, Poker After Dark, Super High Roller Bowl, a whole bunch of stuff on the shop right now, so go and check that out. And I found it fitting to do the Super High Roller Bowl final table during Super Bowl week. Look at this, all these connections. Shout out to everyone watching right now. I won't have much time today for all the name shout outs, but I do appreciate if you let me know where you are watching from. It is always good to see a nice international crowd here on Run It Back, but today we'll be diving deep into this final table, so maybe not as much time for shoutouts, but I do appreciate all of you guys, and I'm keeping track of the good questions, and I'm writing them down, and we'll get to those at a later point in the show. Final two players that we need to touch upon, Igor Kurganov and Adrian Mateos. Igor, to me, one of the funniest characters in the high-stakes scene, always has a good conversation ready for you, very philosophical approach, but what is he like at the table for you?
Yeah, he tough opponent, sharp guy. Kind of took a little bit of time off, not completely, but was playing less maybe in 2016, 2017. And then came back and started playing more again around this time. And it was apparent that he had done a lot of studying and been talking to other top players who had been in the mix, and showed up playing like he hadn't been taking the time off. I was impressed with his play in this tournament.
Here's you picking up Jacks, Chidwick with the raise. Jacks, of course, no matter what the stakes are, no matter what game you play, that is a very strong hand. However, do you have to think about more variations of play because Stevie and you talk a lot of poker and have a lot of history?
Yeah, this was an interesting hand, and it's a tricky spot right from the start, whether to call or 3-bet against the open. I probably gave myself some frequency to do either one. I don't recall, but ended up choosing to 3-bet, and it's obviously a strong enough hand to do it. But we are real deep here. I'm 170 big blinds effective with Stevie and over 100 with Foxen when he 4-bets here.
And then also, Imsirovic and Mateos, even though they are the shorter stacks, they are still very deep. Same goes for Talal.
Yeah, this was a super deep final table.
So is ICM a lot less of a factor if it's the case where even the short stacks have over 50 big blinds?
Yes and no. I'd say it's still a pretty big factor, just in a different way. So when everybody's deep, the ICM effects in small pots are not that big because you're playing for a small percentage of your stack. You know, you open, the big blind defends. There's 6 big blinds in the middle. It's not that ICM is not that important, but as a pot threatens to become big and you're looking at potentially playing for stacks, suddenly it's a very big deal.
In this case, you lay down the jacks.
Yeah.
Walk us through how you reached that conclusion.
Um, a big component of it there was kind of just opponent specific and having a bad feeling about the spot. I'd been playing a lot with Alex in the days leading up to this, including in some other tournaments in the series, and I felt like I just had a pretty good sense of kind of his rhythms and sort of spots he would and would not attack. And I just really didn't like that spot. I thought he was really unlikely to have anything worse than like ace king or jacks himself, and so I just got out of the way.
Yeah. It seems when you see the cards like this, we see queens, we see jacks, it seems so straightforward. Oh yeah, I folded jacks, great, fold, move on. But from my perspective, it's also like there is a component of any one of these opponents being able to bluff in every possible spot. How do you, in a spot like this and similar ones, basically lean towards a tighter approach versus, you know, assuming that there might be enough bluffs in his range for you to continue?
Yeah, and you know, it's a spot where I wouldn't be shocked if he had ace 10 suited or king queen suited or something like that. It would be a weird spot for him to get totally out of line with a really weak hand, and jacks is not that high up in my range to have 3-bet against the under the gun open there myself, so it's not a huge hero fold or anything. I do think that the more standard play would have been to call. But yeah, like I said, I just kind of had some spidey senses that it wasn't the spot I wanted to mess with.
So for someone at your level, and you're widely considered as one of the best, no matter what the format is, it always seems to be that, you know, your name is mentioned. How does someone with such a theoretical background in the game and such strong fundamentals still mix in things like gut feeling? Or is that more so a culmination of experience and you know, everything else you've learned over the years that you can now call that a gut feeling, even though it's mostly based on experience? I'm really fascinated by how that works at your level.
Sure. Well, yeah, the technical knowledge does inform the gut feeling. I feel like there's a tendency for people to think of those things as being in opposition in some way. But I think it actually really helps to make those medium-ish deviations from optimal play to have a sense of what optimal play looks like and what things are worth. Like, you know, having some theoretical sense of the orders of magnitude of what a situation is worth. Like, calling jacks there is, I'm guessing here, I don't actually know the answer, but probably in theory worth almost one big blind, if I had to guess. It's almost one big blind better than folding. So that kind of lets you reason about how confident am I that he's not bluffing here to make a around one big blind deviation. And like, I don't think I would ever fold queens in that spot, even if I just had the worst gut feeling in the world. Because I think that's, you know, in theory worth 3 or 4 big blinds, and I'm not gonna make a deviation of that size. But with the jacks, like, from having that kind of fundamental theoretical knowledge, I know it's worth a significant amount, but not overwhelming. It's like probably right on the border, like maybe tens is even mixed optimally, and jacks is like the worst pure continue. Or, I mean, somebody might go and run this in Munker, and I'm just wrong, and like jacks is even just theoretically a fine fold. But it's somewhere in that ballpark. I think it's probably the weakest pure continue and worth a small to medium amount. So that informs thinking like this is the hand that I can deviate with when I've got a bad feeling.
Right. So for fans, for myself, for people watching that are playing and trying to make their way up the ranks, the whole GTO conversation is extremely complex because there's so much to it. But when someone at your level decides, oh, today I'm going to study, do you look at specific examples or situations that you were in, or are you trying to look for situations that are common? Button versus big blind. How do you decide what you need to study and what you're going to work on?
A lot of that is a question of just like what works for you, what's compelling for you and holds your interest. I do like studying stuff that I have that's actually come up in practice. So yeah, I do a bit more of that and a bit less of just like, today we're studying cutoff versus big blind, check, flop, turn leading strategies. Though, I mean, you have to do some of that too. You have to just like work your way through the common scenarios and make sure you're familiar with all of the scenarios that you're playing constantly. You want to be familiar with all of the common late position versus late position sort of spots that make up a large percentage of the hands you play.
So when you go out and play tournaments, does that mean that the majority of decisions that you make are pretty straightforward because you recognize them, or you see a pattern in certain ways that a hand is supposed to be played, that you are being dealt in a certain position, or is there still a lot of deep thought happening in the moment?
I would not say that I very consistently am just looking at a spot and saying, yes, I know exactly how this spot works. I'm sure I'm doing the right thing. Especially when it comes to, implementing computer influenced optimal strategies, like, having a pretty good idea of exactly how you're supposed to play the spot is still like, I'm gonna bet 70% pot here 50% of the time, and 30% pot 20% of the time, and check behind 30% of the time. And like that, you're rarely exactly right about that. Being pretty good is just like having, roughly the right numbers is really good for something like that. So yeah, it's hard. It's hard. There are simple rules that mostly keep you from making big mistakes very often, but playing with really high precision, that there's all kinds of little nitpicky things that don't generalize well.
As we see Foxen in the tank for a very long time against Igor Kurganov here.
This was a wild hand, if I remember right. I don't remember exactly what the action was. But yeah, we started like 10 minutes ago with, I think I had ace queen in the small blind and led the flop. And then a whole bunch of stuff happened from there. I've been out for a long time, but if somehow they're playing a huge pot and nobody has a great hand.
If people want to hear a very drunk Igor Kurganov talk about this hand, if you search on YouTube for Igor Kurganov Run It Back, he did an analysis with me after he got eliminated from this final table, running through this entire hand, and it is pretty funny. And it was.
Oh, I bet that's good.
It is very, very good. And later on, we drank whiskey at the bar and went over this hand in depth. By the way, Ike and I did a podcast as well after he won this tournament. So if you want more, close feelings and emotions in the moment, you can also find that if you search for Isaac Haxton and Remko Rinkema. That was a good time sitting in the corner of the PokerGO studio. Man, it all feels like 10 years ago. For the people in the chat who are wondering what is going on, I see a lot of new people tuning in for the very first time. This is Run It Back. We watch old school poker action. In this case, the 2018 Super High Rollerball final table from the PokerGO studio in Las Vegas. Isaac Haxton is joining me. He was the winner. Spoiler alert. No apologies there. We're breaking it down. We're watching the final table to go through it and to break down some of the hands that we see and also talk strategy and have fun and answer some of the questions that you guys have to ask. By the way, I see more questions about this. It is $3.6 million in real money up top for the winner in this event. People are wondering...
I can confirm it was real money.
It was real money. People are wondering, is this for real money? What is this? Is this a cash game? No, this is a tournament. $3.6 million up top. Shout outs to all my favorite viewers. Mitch is always in the house, and we have tons of regulars watching as always. I see Dave is here from the UK. I appreciate you watching, and all of you that are new as well. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. I do the show once a week every Thursday, and man, do I have a special guest a few weeks from now. Even Isaac Haxton will say, wow, that is pretty cool, but I can't reveal it just yet. But that is going to be really crazy. But I'm very happy to have Ike on the show to break this one down. Also, one more thing I want to mention. We have a new show and a new channel called No Gamble, No Future. Brent Hanks and Jeff Platt talking sports betting and all sorts of crazy DGen shenanigans. That is live every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, and they also have their own YouTube channel. So don't forget to subscribe to that if you are into sports betting. So I appreciate you guys all for jumping into that action. Ike, you're obviously a very famous three-deuce suited player. You are one of the players that got me super excited about poker when I watched that infamous WPT final table, you against Ryan Dowd for the very first time. That feels like a lifetime ago. It was January 2007 when that happened.
Yep.
And obviously you've progressed to a point now where you're still at the top, let's say almost, roughly 13, 14 years later. Was there ever a point between there and now where you had to realize, oh, if I don't step it up right now, if I don't start working harder, I'm going to fall behind? Or have you always been able to stay ahead of the curve?
Kind of immediately after that, actually. I had like one more small tournament score shortly after that. I went deep in the LAPC, and then I went like 40 or 50 straight live tournaments without a cash.
Wow.
And I was not great at that point at no limit tournaments. Before the PCA, my main game had been Limit Hold'em for the 4 years or so that I had been playing poker. I had just started playing No Limit and really just started playing tournaments. And yeah, I was not a very sophisticated player. I was mostly just really aggressive, and sometimes that worked, and a lot of the time it didn't. And yeah, I definitely had to make some improvements following that.
So then when you are a longtime pro such as yourself, how do you stay with the latest developments? Is that a group of friends that reminds you like, oh, this new thing is out, you got to look into this? Or is it a realization in the moment when you play against someone that you realize like, oh, wow, they're doing things that I hadn't considered, or, oh, I'm seeing new lines and strategies? How do you...
Yeah, both of those things for sure.
Okay, because I wonder how you stay at the top for so long.
Yeah, having a good circle of friends who I work with is really important. Just putting in a lot of volume, playing a lot of poker with tough opponents and paying attention to what they're doing. And when you see something you don't understand, taking some time away from the table to try and figure it out and either incorporate a new idea into your game or assure yourself that you don't actually think it makes sense and you don't need to incorporate that new idea into your game. Yeah, just kind of staying with it, doing it every day. I think that's the big thing for me is just I just haven't taken much time off at any point. I have been playing competitive, tough poker games, if not every day, a couple days a week, all the time for just as long as I've been an adult. No long breaks. And yeah, just keep working hard, trying hard, staying enthusiastic about the competition.
So walk me through an average day in life of Isaac Haxton. Like what does a day look like for you? Do you have a lot of times to study and play? Do you balance it? Do you do a week of studying, a week of playing? How do you basically organize your life as a professional?
Well, largely I'm just reacting to what there is going on. With tournament schedules, when there are tournaments, I'm playing, and when there's time off, I am studying more. And kind of the same thing for cash games. Cash games kind of come and go. There was a stretch last year where there was a lot of online short deck action, so I was studying a lot of short deck and playing a lot of short deck. And then during the World Series in the summer, I will typically play mixed games at the Bellagio. So that's how I'll be spending my playing time. And in the weeks leading up to that, I'll be focusing my studying time on getting ready for those games. Yeah, but mostly it's just reacting to what opportunities the poker world is presenting me with.
For the people asking in the chat, this was a $300,000 US buy-in. So this is a very, very serious high roller event. 3.6 million up top for those who didn't catch the memo on that one. But yeah, this is very, very high stakes, and this is not just some everyday tournaments. Ike, is there special preparation that goes into knowing you'll play a small, tough field against a lot of your competitors? Is there tape watching like in the NFL? How do you prepare for this?
Yeah, sometimes I will set aside some time to watch tournament footage where I know that people I'm going to be playing against have been playing. Especially now with the proliferation of streamed online final tables, there's so much content out there from final tables with the top players who I'm playing against all the time. I definitely review that stuff. Yeah.
It's very fascinating because because of the pandemic, we were forced to focus more on online events, and it has been interesting to watch some of these whole card up final tables between some of the top players. Waked and Baked on Twitch is asking, what are some good? It's a great name. What are some good study habits? Do you have any sort of overarching tips on people that want to work on their game?
I don't have the most organized studying habits. I think I'm kind of lucky in that it just kind of comes naturally to me to be curious and motivated and just look at stuff. I don't have to really make a plan to Monday is c betting and Tuesday is check raising, and Wednesday we look at 3-betting strategies when there's a raise and a call. And I'm not that organized about it. I just I get curious about something and I spend some time looking at it. So I think a lot of my recommendation would be to, yeah, let your curiosity guide you and study the stuff you find interesting. There's a bit of a trap there where you can end up going deep down the rabbit hole and spending all day studying river strategies on boards with 5 to a straight and 3 to a flush and figuring out where the bluff them off the chop combos come from, and it's never going to matter in a real game situation. But for the most part, yeah, I think a really good way to approach things is to play poker, see the spots that come up where you aren't confident, don't know what you're doing, and then try and study that away from the table. And yeah, just at least what works for me is to take a kind of holistic, organic approach to just studying stuff you find interesting that has come up in practice, that
Just
where
pausing.
you feel like there's a lot to learn.
Right. I'm just pausing the action here real quick because I'm curious about this spot. It's a raise from Imsirovic with jacks. Chidwick makes the call with king 10 off, and you're looking down at ace 5 suited. You're taking some time. You seem very interested in this pot in this moment. What goes through your mind in a situation like this?
So this is one of these kind of awkward situations with unequal stack sizes where I look at this scenario and like it's immediately pretty clear to me that what I want to do is raise an amount that is going to commit me against Ali. I have a good enough hand, and it's the sort of spot that I need to play aggressively. And so I'm just kind of trying to work out like it would almost be fine to just go all in here. Stevie almost never has a good hand to have flatted the small blind here with Ali on less than 25 big blinds. But that seems like not really the most precise way to play it. If Stevie just somehow has kings or ace king suited or something, I don't want to just step in it for all the chips against that. So I was just like working out what kind of raise size I can make here that is big enough that Ali can never call rather than go all in. And big enough to make it difficult for Stevie to continue very often when Ali folds, because I'm going to have this kind of strong linear range of things that I'm committing myself against Ali with. But at the same time, I don't want to risk more than I have to for the handful of times that I'm running into a strong hand from Stevie.
That was the elimination of Ali Imsirovic, taking home $540,000 as Ike professionally made the nut flush on that hand. 8 of clubs was the only remaining out for Ali on the turn, and we move on with 6-handed play. One of the things that I've learned from talking to you and other players over the years is how the smaller aces, how the value of those has changed as you guys are diving more into learning what the computer says. And is it safe for me to assume that a hand like ace 5 is now generally considered much better than ace 6?
Yeah, in nearly every situation, even calling it all in a lot of the time. Specifically, there's that gap where ace 6 is just a uniquely bad hand. Ace 5 can make the low straights, and ace 7, ace 8 have some significantly better high card value. There are scenarios where you prefer ace 5 over those hands, but they're less common. Yeah.
But that's also something for you, I'm assuming, that has become more known and more obvious as you guys are running more sims, right? Because
Sure. I mean, some of it was apparent when all we were working with was PokerStove. You can figure that out, right away, that against a fairly tight range, ace five is just better than ace six. And even that ace five is like one of the strongest hands that you can have against a very strong range, where you're looking at your opponent having like aces, kings, queens, ace, king. Ace five is one of the better hands you can have against a range like that. So some of that was apparent pretty immediately just from looking at hot and cold equities. At deeper stacks, the relative value of a hand like ace five is sort of less obvious, and became more clear with better tools.
Right. For the people who are just tuning in, I'm seeing lots of new viewers today. Please don't forget to like this video if you enjoy the content. I see you guys all on Facebook, on Twitch, and on YouTube. Keep those questions coming, by the way. A question I've seen now multiple times, Ike, and I like to sort of pull this into a broader scope, is the finances between tournaments that have buy-ins of these enormous sizes.
Sure.
How do you decide on how big a piece to take? The question that came in is, Ike, how much did you have of yourself when you won this event? How much does it vary? How do you approach the economics of playing events that aren't necessarily happening every week, so it's hard to get a big sample size, and of course, losing a few of these in a row, it can have a big impact on your bankroll.
Right. I would say typically people sell action for high stakes tournaments to leave themselves with a piece of themselves that represents, on the extremely aggressive end, somebody might put 2 or 3% of their bankroll into a single tournament. I would say that is on the extremely aggressive end. I think more common would be in the ballpark of 0.5% to 1%. Playing tournaments on a buy-in on a bankroll of less than 100 buy-ins is pretty reckless, I think. So you kind of just go by that. And for Americans and other people who do pay tax on their gambling winnings, tax considerations are pretty significant as well. So this tournament happened in December in a year when I was having a good year, which put me in a position to gamble more aggressively than I might otherwise, because you're basically gambling in pre-tax dollars. I have a buffer of winnings already at this point, so if I lose, I deduct the loss. So I lose only around 60% of the money I put up. And at the same time, if I win only around 60% of what I win. But as contrasted to the beginning of the year or late in the year, but you're close to zero, you're in a situation where you're losing 100% of your losses and keeping only 60% of your wins. And in that situation, you have to be much, much more cautious.
And with that, Isaac Haxton just explained why WPT 5 Diamond is always such a great event.
Yes. So tax considerations are a really big deal for American pros and some other nationalities.
That's a really great answer, and I really appreciate it. But I have to ask, what is the biggest gamble risk / bankroll wise investment or event or cash game that you ever played? What's the story of like you swinging for the fences and making a play maybe outside of what you would recommend yourself?
I mean, early in my career, I was just kind of constantly gambling bigger than I should have been because I didn't know any better. I was playing limit hold'em with the strategy of moving up every time I had 200 big bets for the next stake, and then moving back down if I lost half of it. So that led to going from like playing 50-cent dollar to 81.60 real fast, and then back down some and back up. And with a big edge early in your career with no real commitments, it's not the worst thing to be super aggressive like that, but that was a bit much.
Do you miss those days sometimes?
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely a part of me that misses treating my bankroll a little more like I'm just running up a high score in a video game and not thinking at all about what it corresponds to in real life.
It makes me wonder, though, at this point in your life and in your career, where does the fun and excitement of the game come from now that it's no longer about getting that video game high score? Like, what really brings you pleasure in this life as a poker pro?
Mostly the competition against others and the challenging myself to play as well as I can. I just really like the game. I really like the challenge of playing well. I like kind of the meta challenges of being an effective professional too. Like I enjoy the challenge of playing a lot of tables on a Sunday when there are a bunch of tournaments that are worth playing. I think that's a fun challenge. I sometimes get a pretty big kick out of like the time management challenges of a busy season of tournaments or cash games where there's stuff running at odd hours and I'm setting alarms for 1 a.m. to get up and play the game that starts at 2 a.m. And trying to sleep well and show up well rested for the games I'm playing when I'm sleeping from 6 p.m. to 1 a.m. And I get a kick out of that kind of time management, performing well under weird stresses. I enjoy all of that. I think that's maybe a little weird. I think more of my peers either do that because they feel like they have to earn the money that they want to earn, or they just opt out of the kind of unpleasant playing odd hours type of stuff. But for me, I think it's real fun.
I can totally feel that, though. I understand where you're coming from, and it gives this extra sort of spice to the whole thing because you've been doing it for so long. Then, like, these deviations are what keeps it fun and interesting. This hand, by the way, got to the river with almost nothing in the middle, and then all of a sudden, you guys both have two pair, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
A river battle like this, it seems as though it's hard to get really out of hand because how small the pot is. But I also see some options and lines where Chidwick just goes blasting, and all of a sudden you're faced with a weird decision, right?
Right. So what happened here? It was limp check pre. I think he bet the flop I called and then check turn. Was that the action?
That's correct. Yes.
So yeah, this is a spot where he can make a really big raise, and there's not much I can do because I'm not going to check behind strong on the turn very often at all. It's difficult for me even to be very strong here. I guess we're deep enough pre that I can have checked with pocket sixes or pocket fours. And yeah, I can have most of the two pair combos here, but the turn is so draw heavy and I'm in position with a covering stack at a final table. I'm just not going to be playing very trappy. And the nuts is going to change on every river card except a 5 or lower non-club, or 4 or lower non-club. So I don't need to be playing a turn strategy that really protects my river range that much for those spots. So I'm very exposed to a big check raise there because he can have all of those strong hands, and I very rarely can have any of them.
So is that a feeling of sort of being trapped by the situation because your hand is too strong to check behind?
Oh yeah, there's no consideration to not betting my hand.
Right.
And then, yeah, I have a very good hand to call it with.
So that's one of those situations where it's bad news, but you can't fold anyway.
Yeah, probably not. I don't recall if I gave myself some frequency to make a fold there in game. I probably didn't. I think it's just such a strong hand I have to call.
Right. The word frequency gets thrown around a lot. When I first starting with pen and paper covering events, players would never use that word. Now the word frequency and whatever randomizer you guys use seems to be much more of a common thing. When did that start, and how do you in the moment figure that out?
So I think it had started just a little bit before the solver boom, before PioSolver hit the market and everybody started studying solver outputs. I think some of the top players who were approaching the game more theoretically had some sense of the idea that you needed to play mixed strategies with certain hands, that there wasn't one right play. The right play was call half the time, fold half the time in a lot of scenarios. That's a thing you can work out with pen and paper, looking at simple models of river situations or something. But yeah, it really took hold when we started to look at solver outputs. Prior to seeing solver outputs, I thought most of the time there was one right play, and then you were going to have mixed strategies around the margins. Like, you were going to always bet the flop with top pair jack kicker or better, and then you were going to have mixed strategies with 10-9-8 kickers and pure check 7 or lower. And it turns out that's just not at all how it works. In Hold'em, it's probably more common for a hand to play a mixed strategy in any given spot than not. There's at least a large percentage of it kind of depends how you count, but say for a flop C betting strategy, very often most of your range is going to be mixed to better check. So as we began to realize that was the shape of optimal play, and further that there were obvious exploits available against opponents who weren't doing that, I think it became more and more common for people to explicitly randomize their play, to use some kind of randomization tool to decide what plays to make out of so like the decision you're making internally is I'm going to bet 70% of the time, and then you actually externalize is this one of the times I bet or check? I think that became much more common in the couple years after everybody started studying Pio.
That, to me, you just summed it up. That, to me, is the most fascinating part about this whole trend into this sort of new era of strategy approach is I think, correct me if I'm wrong, we as humans are terrible at doing something 50% of the time when we tell ourselves to do it 50% of the time. We will basically always do it or never do it because it is impossible to balance that. So then when you a very well-trained professional is basically relying on a number or the roll of the dice or however you want to do that to decide your outcome. Is that ever something that makes you uncomfortable when you roll the 10% in which you're going all in? Is it ever weird that, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Give me an example of that or explain.
I mean, every once in a while I get cold feet. Every once in a while I'm like, yeah, okay. I hate this, but I'm pretty sure I have to call some of the time. How often do I have to call? I think I have to call 15% of the time. Oh, I really hate it, though. I hope I don't roll a call. Then I glance over at a chip, and it indicates I should call. I'm like, nope, fuck it. Fuck it, hold. I'm not calling.
That's amazing. I mean, we're talking nitty-gritty stuff at a high level, but it's still fascinating because you have analyzed this through and through, that there is a possibility that you have to make a decision that goes against everything that you want to do, and then you roll the number and you still don't do it. It's just
of all the time.
It's just brilliant. It's awesome. So it probably plays a lot more with close decisions, and then you have whatever the anchor point is that decides for you.
Well, sure, because if you've decided I'm going to call sometimes and fold sometimes, and I'm going to use the randomizer to decide, you've explicitly made the decision that calling is worth 0. Calling and folding are equal in value, and you know you need to do some of each as a defensive strategy to make sure that you're not exploitable to an opponent who can guess whether you're going to always call or never call. So it's by definition as close as a spot can be when you've decided that it's a spot where you're going to need to randomize. So yeah, if you have just the littlest inkling of this is a spot where actually I really do want to call, or this is a spot where actually I really don't want to call because I think my opponent might be misplaying a previous street in such a way that he gets here with too many hands to bluff with. So I'm going to tweak it just a little one way or the other, or I just have a bad feeling. I think he has it this time. It's always a really close spot. So if you're explicitly randomizing your decision and you have some kind of hunch, it's easy to go with the hunch. But of course, that adds up over time, and maybe you're a person who just doesn't really emotionally like to fold the river. And so you are consistently finding reasons to want to call the river. And you know that, like, yeah, this is supposed to be mixed call or fold, but I got a good feeling about call this time. But then you have a good feeling about call a lot of the time for years, and suddenly all your opponents know you're somebody who calls the river too much, and now you're getting exploited. So it's this really difficult dance of, like, weighting the value of your own intuitions and knowing when to just suck it up and do what the randomizer tells you versus trying to trust a hunch. It's a very, very tricky sort of decision to make.
It's a fascinating topic that we can spend hours on. Let's pay some tribute here. Igor Kurganov getting eliminated in 6th place, $756,000. This is before he dives face first into a bottle of whiskey, and then I caught him at the bar and we had a fun night. So that's definitely good times.
Often the only thing to do after you've been playing a tournament for several days and suddenly are not anymore.
That's very true. And honestly, I'm assuming it's not ginger ale, right? What you're drinking right now?
No. I've got a little rum here to.
Oh, beautiful. What
go
kind
ahead
of?
And relive the moment.
Are you a rum connoisseur? What are we drinking?
I think I was just trying to figure out how to pronounce this the other day. I think it's just Pirate. Pyrat.
Okay.
Pirate.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a Caribbean rum. It's
oh, beautiful, lovely.
Nice golden aged rum, very sweet and fruity.
I can smell it from here. I know exactly what that feels like. Man, here I am on 30 days without alcohol trying to lose weight for a stupid prop bet, and I have a whole cabinet full of Japanese whiskeys and all sorts of stuff.
Oh,
It's
that must be rough.
It's very, very rough. By the way, for the people in the chat, I'm live on YouTube, on Twitter, and on Facebook. Please send in your questions for Ike. I saw some people wondering, is he asking any questions? Yes, I am. I'm trying to bunch them up. I'm trying to blend them into the conversation. I'm trying to be a professional interviewer here. So I'm trying to get through all these topics that I'm interested in and that you guys are interested in. So don't worry. We're watching this entire final table, so we have quite a few more big hands to come. Ike, please interrupt me if I miss something. I have a question from Ivan that I'm curious in. It's a great question. He says, "Hey, can you ask Ike how big of a gap, skill difference is there between Talal?" or someone like Talal versus the average pro in this field? Ivan says, I don't think it can be that much, right? If someone like Ike someone like Talal who plays a lot. Can you quantify that in any way? Can you explain like maybe explain where the difference would be?
I mean, I could try to go down the list of everybody in the field and tell you exactly what I think their ROI is, but I think I probably won't do that. Yeah, how would I describe the difference there? That's a tough question, because it's mainly a lot of small things. I think, kind of to put it broadly, a lot of it comes down to precision. Someone like Talal may be relying a little bit more on intuition in general and won't necessarily like have as many points of reference for I've studied some output to know that in this scenario I'm supposed to be opening this exact range of hands, and that 2.5x open outperforms a 2.2x open under these specific ICM conditions.
Right. So we're talking details.
Yeah, it's mostly details.
Right. Brent Hanks chimes in from the chat. He says, Ike has inspired me to pour a drink. Thank you, Ike. That is the type of inspiration that we are here for, and there's talk about Arby's in the chat, so I think we're going down the right path here. Let's get this video to at least...
We were going down the right path. I don't know if Arby's is the right path.
We'll get some food talk in at the end here, and maybe
it's a path.
It is a path. It is definitely a path. But I think that as chat drinks more, the conversations will veer off further and further into the abyss. Let's get this video to...
Arby's and drinking are certainly correlated.
That's what I was getting at. So get this video to 100 likes at least, guys, on YouTube. I would really appreciate that. We got a ton of questions coming in. I really love that. I think that we have some great stuff that we can sort of combine in a few questions. Let me see. We have here, a basic question here. Ike, what's your biggest downswing ever? How long did it last, and how bad was it?
Let's see. I think beginning fall of 2008 or so through beginning of 2010, I lost almost all my money.
Wow.
I went from having probably close to $2 million after my World Series 40K score to less than 300K by beginning of 2010. A lot of that was playing Rail Heaven on Full Tilt, the 501K No Limit games with Guy Lalibert. I was selling action and aiming to be relatively responsible, but yeah, I was also buying pieces of other people, and we all lost. And at the same time, I was doing a good bit of tournament staking, which I was not doing well. I did not have a good understanding of the variance and the edges, and how the structures of makeup deals work. If you don't think too carefully about it, the idea of putting somebody on a makeup deal, if anybody listening is not familiar with that, the basic idea is I pay your buy-ins to play tournaments. As you lose, you accumulate a net loss. We track what that is. That's your makeup figure. And if you win, I keep 100% of the winnings until it gets back to zero, and then we split profits 50-50. If you don't think too carefully about that, it sounds an awful lot like you split profits 50-50 with the player you're backing. And if they ought to be winning, both of you ought to be winning in the long run. And that is true in the sufficiently long run. If you actually play an infinite number of tournaments, in the limit, it approaches a 50-50 split of the edge. If you play only hundreds or thousands of tournaments, then depending on the player's edge and the probability distribution of outcomes, the split is more like maybe 80% of the EV to the player, 20% of the EV to the backer, or over a short enough sample, 150% of the EV to the player, and the backer is just losing. And I did not really understand that at the time, and I made a lot of pretty bad investments.
So are you saying here that being a backer or backing players is a terrible idea in general, and are there any exceptions?
Makeup deals are a terrible idea nearly always. Makeup deals are a bad structure for backing. Backing players is not generally a terrible idea. Tournament backing has increasingly gone the direction of tournament by tournament action selling at a markup. If I am playing 100K and I don't want to have 100% of myself, I sell action at a markup, maybe 105. So if you want 10% of me in the 100K, you pay $10,500. And the distribution of EV between the player and the backer is very transparent in a deal like this. If we both think my ROI is 10%, then paying me 105 is splitting the EV 50-50. If we think it's 7%, then I'm getting 5% and you're getting 2%. And it's easy to understand what you're doing. Makeup deals, the math is really hard. And it's very difficult to know whether you're getting a good or a bad deal. It's not impossible to have a makeup deal that is reasonable for everyone involved, but it's an unnecessarily opaque structure for a deal. It makes it hard for anybody to really know what is going on.
There goes my chance of ever free rolling a whole World Series of Poker. Thanks, Ike. We got a Dapper Dave is really active in the chat, and I want to get his question in here. I'm making an assumption here. Did you follow any of the Doug versus Daniel heads up match, Ike?
A little bit.
A little bit. That's enough, I think. He says, please ask Isaac about his thought process on defending paired boards. This seems very specific. He says, it really looks like Doug Polk took advantage of Daniel on those boards. Negreanu did not seem to know whether to call down light or fold. So extrapolate from this question whatever you think is reasonable, but is there some method to that madness from your perspective?
Sure. I mean, it's like anything else. There are various ways to analyze it. Today, the most obvious being to just look at some PIO outputs and see what PIO says you're supposed to do. Paired boards tend to be tricky because neither player has a strong hand very often, and on top of that, card removal effects are really important on paired boards. I think this is something that almost everyone has an intuitive sense of, even if they haven't kind of put it to themselves in these terms. But a really important feature of paired boards is if the board is like 6-6 deuce, almost all of the strong hands contain a 6. So when you have a strong hand that contains a 6, your opponent has a strong hand half as often as he would otherwise. And to take that one step further, what that means is that when you're trying to value bet, your opponent has a strong hand about half as often as they would when you are trying to bluff. So what that tends to do is it forces you to use relatively small sizes, because if you're betting really big, it turns into a situation where your opponent only has to call down with very strong hands, and now they can call often enough to make all of your bluffs lose and still call rarely enough that you're getting very little value with your strong hands. So boards that have this type of effect, most prominently paired boards, tend to force smaller bet sizing because of that card removal effect.
So do you think that, you know, a player like Negreanu in a heads-up battle, a format that he studied a lot and that he got a lot better at during the course of the battle, do you think that could be a specific element that he was not very good at that, you know, Doug was able to exploit? Is that how you basically play heads-up?
It's possible. I don't have any specific insight into that. I didn't watch the match closely enough to have any opinions on how they are playing paired boards. But that's a dynamic I've seen in heads-up matches before, that especially going back like 8-10 years to when players were not as sophisticated and the tools for analysis were not as good. A read I often had on my opponents was that they would c-bet extremely often or always on paired boards and then continue against a check raise too rarely. Those kind of boards where nobody has anything very often can have some kind of interesting inflection points where, like, the level one thing is you just always bet because they're not going to have a good enough hand to continue often enough. And then level two is, well, you just start check raising with any 3 to a straight. And now you do have a hand to continue often enough. And they have to start calling with any backdoor flush draw because that's just how these boards are supposed to work is, Queen 7 with a backdoor flush draw on 6-6-2 is a pretty good hand. You have to bet and call a raise. And so, yeah, depending on the levels that each side is on, you can get quite far from equilibrium.
Instructions unclear. I'm all in. That's basically the solution that I have for this.
And being really interesting.
Okay, well let's set the tone then, because I wasn't paying attention. I'll scroll back a little bit.
I remember this was This was one of the few hands that went badly for me at the final table.
I'm going to make sure my VLC doesn't crash as I scroll back so we get this bet sizing right. For the people who are just tuning in, by the way, this is Run It Back. We are watching some throwback poker footage, and in this case, it is the Super High Roller Bowl 5 final table from 2018. Isaac Haxton is joining me. He is the winner of this event. We're watching the entire final table. We are deep into this final table as we are down to only 5 players. We're about to get into an interesting hand. By the way, keep your questions coming. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and we'll dive into this hand. Ike, take it away, whatever you see, whatever you remember.
All right, yeah. So I'm chip lead at this point, and I'm opening cutoff into 2 other pretty big stacks, and then Adrian has about 15 big blinds in the big blind. I make a slightly loose open here with the queen 9 off, but I think that's like pretty standard with this stack distribution. Just makes sense. And Adrian defends 7-6 off, which, again, a little bit on the loose side, but as by far the shortest stack, I think it makes sense to defend that hand. I flop bottom pair with a gut shot on a very favorable board. I'm going to just kind of almost always be c-betting this board, including with my hand, even though it's like one that is not especially happy to face a raise.
Given Adrian's stack size in this situation, do you have to assess his range differently defending from the big blind?
Yeah. He's going to be defending looser and more reliably jamming all of his best hands than if he were a bit deeper, which produces a lot of these sort of situations where the board comes all high cards and the opener has a very large range advantage and is just going to c-bet like close to all the time, especially when I additionally have this ICM advantage where he is much more heavily disincentivized than me to play a big pot here. So I just c-bet for like literally 1.1 big blinds here. And it applies a ton of pressure.
So then he comes in with the check raise with the
check raise. He has, the bottom gut shot here with 7 high backdoor flush draw. It's like just barely a good enough hand that he pretty much has to continue. And it's the sort of hand that is very happy to win immediately. So he goes for a check raise, which I think is a good play.
So then from his perspective, given how few chips he still has left behind, is he making a plan for specific turns and rivers because, he's basically committing a large portion of his stack?
Yeah. I mean, he's going to kind of have to figure it out as he goes because there are a lot of possibilities. But it's kind of the worst hand he's going to check raise the flop with. So largely he's just going to shut down if he gets called, unless he picks up some additional equity. Here he turns a flush draw and even then decides not to stick it in, which I think is, again, a good play. I think.
So how would he perceive your range at this point? Your continuation bet seems pretty, straightforward and standard, and it's such a small bet that...
Yeah. Not super strong. I think I'm going to stick it in on the flop quite a bit with a bunch of my top pair hands, especially the ones that don't have gut shots like ace-king or king-8 or worse. I think some like ace-10, queen-10, jack-10 even will stick it in right away on the flop. Some flush draws will put it in immediately. So my calling range is going to be some very strong stuff like king, queen, king, jack, any 2-pair or better. I think I'm going to always call.
So what's your decision here? Because you can take a free card. I mean, obviously you have showdown value with the 9, I'm assuming.
Yeah. I think my hand is a pretty clear check on the turn. I have pretty good equity against anything I'm ahead of and pretty poor equity against anything that will call me. So it's a pretty nice hand to just see the river. And now I think the really interesting decision here for me comes on the river when the 4th flush card hits. And this is a hand I have actually looked at a bit away from the table. Under ordinary circumstances, just playing for linear chip values early in a tournament or in a cash game, my hand is too strong to bluff the river here. But I think given ICM, I made a good deviation here from that default approach to bluff with this hand, because since he's risking his tournament life to call here, he needs to win. We'll round it and say he's facing a 2/3 pot bet here. Under normal circumstances, to call a 2/3 pot bet, you need to win 2/7 of the time. Given that the scenarios he's looking at here, instead of, being left with 450K, or if he folds, or 0 if he calls and loses, or 1.5 million if he calls and wins, he's looking at out of the tournament versus 450K chips versus 1.5 million chips, which don't have linear values at all. And he maybe needs to win nearly half the time, or at least more like 3/7 of the time, something like that, for calling to be good here. And for that reason, I have to reach deeper into hands with a little bit of showdown value to find additional bluffs to have the right ratio of value and bluff in this spot to give him a difficult decision. I maybe overdid it a little by using a hand this strong, but I kind of think it was a good play.
From Adrian's perspective, at what point does this become an easy call, and at what point does this become an impossible call? If we go basically up or down the range.
I can't imagine considering a fold with 9 of spades or better. I think mostly he has to call with flushes. Maybe if he has a very bad one that blocks almost none of my value bets, like if he has king of hearts, 2 of spades here or something like that. Blocking the king isn't bad either. But if somehow he had like 10 of hearts, 2 of spades, which he probably doesn't play pre-flop, but
right,
so some of these very worst flushes, maybe those can consider folding. I think he has a hand that has to call here. And then I don't know that there's really much of anything that's an impossible call. If he doesn't beat a hand like I have, like I don't think he should ever call the river with Jack 9 or even Ace 9 probably. Though again, that's a hand he can't really have pre-flop.
Right. Yeah. So that's an interesting part as well about, whenever a friend asks you like, oh, what do I do on the river here? And like, how did you end up there? Like what preceded that decision making? And, how we construct the range from the moment that we start the hand, not from, we're not going backwards on this. So a lot of hands, he also has to go through, would you play this hand that way? Would you play that hand this way? Like, yeah. I think that's a lot of the considerations here. And the time banks make this even more interesting, and we can see on the screen he's 3.5 minutes into the tank here. This is one of those, I guess, justified 15-minute tanks if this was a tournament without time banks.
This is a super tough spot.
Right, it's
obviously a very consequential one too.
Yeah, and it's tournament life, like you said. He could actually have a decent stack if he calls and wins. He's going to have more chips than Chidwick, so that has a huge impact as well. And it's just very interesting to hear you analyze this because we can assume that Adrian is having a similar thought process. Did you ever talk to Adrian about this hand?
I can't recall.
Or in a broader spectrum, like does it ever happen where you discuss a big moment and a big hand with an opponent afterwards?
Yeah. Yeah, in general, that's a thing that happens for sure. And yeah, I think he made a good call there. I think mostly he shouldn't be folding flushes. I think having the 6 as his other card is pretty good.
And he gets the big double up, and now you lose some steam for the first
Yep.
and only time, I think, at this final table. But it's very interesting. I mean, there's some talk going back and forth here, and I think you guys could both also appreciate a hand like this.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought he played that hand well, and I think I said so in the moment.
Yeah, no, that's really fun to watch. And of course, a hand like this, for us, the fans, talking to you guys at home, the audience, when we watch this hand in the moment, clearly, we, as poker fans, aren't smart enough to go this deep, but it's still an interesting hand. Hearing your analysis, makes it even more fascinating, because just hearing how many levels you guys go through to make a decision is so fascinating, because to me, I'm a decent poker player, but it's like, oh, I have a flush, we're only 5-handed, I can't really fold. That is way too plain of a way of looking at it, but I think most people would actually look at it that way.
Sure.
And in this case, we the people would have been right. But in a lot of cases, of course, that type of analysis doesn't get you very far. But it is very interesting to hear a different way of diving this deep into poker analysis. Question from Matt D on YouTube. He says, what's the high-end ROI you or any world-class player is able to attain in online low or micro stakes, big field MTTs? So we're diving off the deep end here. But how big of a winner could you be if you had to start from the bottom is basically the question.
I don't have any idea, to be honest with you.
Could you build it back up? That's maybe a better question.
I think so, yeah. I think, yes, starting with, well, I mean, in reality, if I had to start over with no money for some reason, I would
Borrow.
get backing of some sort.
No makeup
sell
deal.
action for stuff. But if for some reason I had to have 100% of myself in everything and start with, $1,000 or $10,000 or something like that, yeah, I do think I could build it back up. I haven't given very serious thought to what games I would play or what I think my ROI would be. I think of the smaller stake stuff I play now, like large field 1Ks online and stuff like that, maybe a 15%-ish ROI would be pretty good. Maybe for some of the sort of special events with really good structures and particularly huge fields, it gets a little higher than that. I don't take seriously anybody who is claiming to have like a 50% ROI, even in very soft stuff. I think 50% ROIs mostly don't exist.
Right. Even if you were to play, very low stakes, it's unattainable because the field sizes just make the variance so high.
I don't know that it's necessarily a matter of the field sizes making the variance high. Neither of those things actually really directly suppresses ROI. If anything, you will have the highest ROI in extremely large fields.
That makes sense.
And that will correspond to also having extremely high variance. But the structures in those tournaments tend not to be great. It's hard to have just an astronomical edge in a tournament where the average stack for most of the late stages is in the vicinity of 15 big blinds. Like most of the field is just going to play 15 big blinds like reasonably competently. When a large percentage of the highest value decisions in the tournament, you can get the right answer by consulting snap shove. Edges just don't get that big.
Thanks, Max Silver. who I have a prop bet with. So stay fat, Max. I need to pay for a new bicycle. But this is a question I love asking all the time. Yes, we have a weight loss bet, Max and I. This is a question I love asking. If you were to sell action to the general public for the WSP main event, what would your markup be, realistically thinking of, what your ROI should be? Back in the day, and I'm talking when I first got onto the scene, there were players selling, at 6x because they knew they could get it. But from your perspective,
I paid 100% markup on a few main event pieces back in the day.
I believe it right away. But what would you say is a realistic price for yourself, your current skill level in the WSP main event?
I don't know. This is one of those questions everybody has thought a lot about and nobody knows the answer.
Which makes it a great question.
Rating myself as well inside the 100 highest ROIs, but probably not the top 10. I think maybe 25 or 30%.
That's very low, because that means that everyone else is basically offering you a shit deal.
Yeah.
So basically, what you're saying is that there's hardly any.
I don't buy main event pieces.
Right. There's hardly anyone selling fair prices.
I mean, I don't want to say it's unfair. I could well just be wrong.
Isaac Haxton
I know my opinion on this is kind of outside the consensus, I think.
Yeah, because everyone...
There are a lot of people who think it's more like 50. Reasonable people whose ideas I take seriously. There are a lot of people who think it's several hundred, and I think they're clearly wrong.
I mean, everyone and their mom who's playing the main event for the first time is selling at 1.2. So
yeah,
it just seems like they grab a number out of the air because it's nice because it pays for the hotel.
Yeah.
We have.
I don't see how that adds up. I don't see how there can be somebody who is maybe optimistically toward the bottom of the top third of the field, and that person has a 20% ROI. You just have to have a solid 15-20% of the field who are returning zero, and clearly that's, I mean, but by which I mean minus 100%, and right. I don't think that is real. I think that unless you can't be relied upon to show up every day and make legal poker plays, I think it's pretty hard to lose over 50%.
That's really funny. By the way, we see the departure of Adrian Mateos here, busting out against Alex Foxen, ace-king against nines, shaking hands all around for Adrian, who takes home just shy of $1 million, as we are down to four-handed play here in the 2018 Super High Roller Bowl 5 final table from the PokerGO studio in Las Vegas. So everyone who's just tuning in, yes, we are watching a rerun. Ike is breaking it down for us. If you have questions for Ike, please send them into the chat. We are live on YouTube, on Twitch, and on Facebook. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. I do this show once a week, every Thursday night. I got Sam Trickett coming up on the show. Maybe watch some one-drop action with him. That should be a good time. Funny little mention here for a username on Twitch, which I think you and I both recognize. 888 Dominic says, just stopping by to say that Ike is right. Always good to know. That's all he had to say, and that's all we have to know. Dominic also.
I can count on Dom to be on my side about ROI pessimism.
For the people who want to work on their game and watch more of this high stakes action, as well as new episodes of Poker After Dark and High Stakes Poker, you can find that on PokerGo. So if you use the promo code HSP, you can watch all the poker you have ever dreamed of. We've added every single WSOP broadcast that was on TV from 2003 all the way up until 2019 to PokerGo. So if you want to dive into the archives, watch some Marcel Lusk 7-card stud action or whatever your heart desires, it is all on PokerGo, as well as those new episodes every Monday, every Wednesday night, new episodes, and use the promo code, take $20 off. Keep the questions coming. I'll make sure to look at those as we go. This hand, by the way, are we missing anything good here?
Yeah, I think I'm about to run a big bluff and get Talal off King Queen. I opened cutoff, he called button, I see bet flop, and am betting again on the turn.
Wow.
So I had a good feeling about that one.
For those that missed the board, we have King Queen on, or Talal has King Queen on 7 King Ace Ace. To me, seeing this doesn't look like a straightforward fold because his hand is so strong. But how do you feel about his fold there?
I think it's only a little on the tight side. I forget my flop c-bet size, but I mean, to get to the turn, mostly he has an ace or a king. So when he faces another bet, folding some kings is not crazy. And the queen kicker makes only a smallish difference. I'm not going to have king 10. I'm representing ace or bluff. Even like mostly pretty good ace.
As the Doug versus Daniel match wrapped up yesterday, and congrats to Doug for winning 1.2 million after bullying Daniel into a match over the course of the last 6 years, which I still cannot comprehend. Feuds and battles and people making wagers of various sizes is always a fun thing to discuss. Have you offered challenges? Have you been challenged? And are you tickled by stuff like this?
I don't believe I've ever just made a formal challenge to the world. Anyone who wants to I'll lock myself in for 50,000 hands of 200, 400 heads up. Definite props to the handful of people who have done that and followed through. I guess it's mostly just Phil.
Yeah. and it's Tom who still he may or may not have some challenges
and
left.
Followed through is an important part of getting any props for that.
That's true. But would you embark on a heads up battle if the situation was right? I know there's lots of talk nowadays about future challenges. Having seen the response from the public, having seen the general interest, there's definitely some things that would make that into a fun thing to watch.
Yeah, I'm open to the idea. If anybody wants to shoot me an offer, I am willing to negotiate. I don't think there is a game that I'm the best in the world at heads up right now. Certainly not Hold'em or PLO or short deck or any of the limit games. No, that there just pretty clearly isn't one. But if you think I think you suck, you have a good chance of getting me to agree.
I feel as though that list is very long of players, very long. Challenge versus MJ is being referenced in the chat by multiple people. Where does that stand? Has that been discussed? Are there any details?
He wants to play live. I'm not going to be doing that probably until I've been vaccinated at the earliest. If he changes his mind and wants to play online, I'm ready to do that. And hopefully it happens live whenever that seems like a safe thing to do. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Right. We'll
I'm interested if and when the time is right.
Right. I'd love to see that, and hopefully we can
it'd be fun.
bring that to the PokerGo studio because, as we all saw, Doug versus Daniel, and of course the high stakes duel between Phil and Antonio was a great success, and people got a big kick out of seeing those guys go head to head. By the way, Helmuth winning 3 in a row was just an epic display. I don't know if Antonio can show his face anywhere anymore, and maybe he'll have to go for some rematches, or maybe it's the long con. Maybe he's letting Phil win, and then he takes it all back in the private games. Who knows? I've seen a few questions about large buy-in events and the Triton Million, one drop, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. How do you think these events will fit into the poker economy and poker landscape looking into the future? Like, how much room is there for, $1 million buy-in tournaments? It seems to me, when this was first announced back in 2012, like, wow, they're going to do this once. And then it became once every 2 years. And now it almost seems as though every year there's something crazy like this on the schedule.
Yeah, I mean, as long as there are a handful of amateurs who are interested in playing $1 million poker tournament, there will be $1 million poker tournaments. The backing economy for professional players has certainly reached a point where if you are generally accepted to be one of the best players in the world, you can sell hundreds of thousands, $1 million, maybe even a couple million worth of action to play in a soft tournament. So as long as there are people who are not the best poker players in the world who want to play stuff like that, it should happen.
Right. So it's basically sort of simple economics. If there's a demand, then you and everyone else will show up. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. It almost seems too simple of an answer, but it also makes sense because that is literally how it works. Maybe a bit of a more fun question here. Thomas says, can you ask Ike to name his top 5 heads-up PLO players of all time? So, just throwing that out there. Do you have any names in mind that come to mind?
I don't know. I've been out of the heads-up PLO scene for a while.
Or even back when you were playing, who were some of the toughest guys you faced?
Back when I was playing, the 2 people I didn't want to play against were Ben Tollerin and Ben Solsky, or also both friends of mine. And toughest opponents I played against outside of that, Berry Sweet was very good, and I kind of have the sense that he got a good bit better just around when I stopped playing all that much heads-up PLO.
While you're thinking, we're down to 3-handed play. Talal Shakerchi eliminated in 4th place for $1.1 million. We're down to 3-handed now between Isaac Haxton, Stephen Chidwick, and Alex Foxen. The 3 worst players to ever invite to your home game right here on the final table. Maybe you can buy enough beers to get them to loosen up a little bit and to do some crazy, to play crazy a little bit. But in this format, there would be no seat at this table that I would like to sit down in. Is there still, I don't know. Okay. A criticism that I hear a lot is like poker's gotten too serious. Poker's gotten too tough. There's too much talk about the GTO. The wizards are taking over. It's boring, blah, blah, blah. I don't agree with all of that. I do have some takes, but I'll keep those, to myself for the sake of being the interviewer and not trying to lay down my opinions. But what I'm curious about is there still room to have fun at the table? And, do you sometimes just go out and drink with your friends and play poker and sort of gamble for fun? Or is it all just strictly business for you when you show up to a poker event?
I mean, I love playing poker. I have a lot of fun doing it. But yeah, for me, the fun is not about it's about playing the game, and I enjoy the competition, and I enjoy the social aspect of it too. I like chatting with people while I'm playing. I find poker fun from a social perspective too, but the idea of playing just for fun, I've honestly never understood it. Like, every once in a while, I find myself in some situation where I'm supposed to play poker and not try because, like, it's a charity event, or I'm drinking and playing micro stakes with people who are not serious poker players, or whatever. And like, it's literally difficult for me. Like, it's my turn and I'm supposed to try to make a decision that is informed by something other than what the best play is, and I like literally don't know how to do it. I'm like, well, I mean, I have ace 10 and I have 13 blinds because for some reason we're playing tiny stacks in this silly game. Obviously, I should go all in, but they're tired of me going all in, and that's apparently not the fun thing to be doing. So, what am I supposed? Should I limp? Should I just fold and let other people play? Because I don't know how to play ace 10 for fun for 12 blinds. What are we doing here?
This is why you should just come out to play the 4-8 mix game when we organize that again, just for fun. Play with $1 chips and just drink a lot. But I just while you were talking, I was picturing you heads up in a charity event against Kate Kardashian, randomizing and thinking about your frequencies.
It's not that hard for me to picture.
No, I think that's totally reasonable. I think that's definitely a path that you would go down. That's hilarious. But it is true. People have different ways of having fun. And I personally think, a little bit of personal spice here, that the poker itself has gotten way more exciting to watch as strategy has evolved because of deeper thinking and bigger bluffs and crazier moves. However, I also have to agree that, yes, we don't have Tony G and Gavin Smith yelling at each other at the table anymore. That's just no longer a thing at these stakes. So yeah, it's a bit of both. It goes both ways, and I think that high stakes cash games made for TV are a good compromise there. And I love watching the big guns compete in a format like this just as much because it's a very different sort of feel and environment.
And I do want to put it out there that I mean, at the end of the day, poker is a game, and the point of it is to have fun. And if the way you have fun does not involve trying very hard to win, that's fine. You should play poker in the way that's fun for you. I'm just talking about what it's like for me.
Yeah, no, and that's of course different for everyone. For those who are just tuning in, Ike and I are live taking your questions and watching this 2018 final table. As you can tell, Haxton is both on this feed and on that feed. He's a pretty talented guy. I don't think he's possible of commentating on himself in real time while also playing against Chidwick and Foxen. 2+2 Trollcat on Twitch, great name also, by the way, says, I'm curious about Ike's take on Philip Gruesom's dominating run. Was he ahead of the field at the time, or was there a lot of positive variance?
I mean, I think Phil was playing well relative to the field at that time. I think he was a pretty strong player. But at the same time, whoever is the big winner for the year in live tournaments is certainly also the luckiest player that year.
Right.
That's just pretty much always the case.
Here's a big situation. You against Chidwick. This went in pretty quickly. Obviously.
Yeah, he basically open jammed.
Right. And for those who have been with us from the start, this final table started extremely deep. Stacks are not as deep anymore, but still there's a lot of big blinds in play. Chidwick all in here for about 18 big blinds with the ace queen versus jacks, big coin flip. When the money is in the middle, when you're just waiting for the cards to run out, are you a dead inside kind of guy, or are you adrenaline type of guy when it comes down to a showdown?
No, I sweat the all-ins. I mean, even if it's not like for a ton of money, still kind of just compulsively sweat the runouts.
Chidwick sent home for 1.5 million in third place, and now you are heads up against Alex Foxen. Fairly similar stack sizes.
Yep.
Going back to an earlier question that I saw in the chat, did you fear anyone at the final table, and was there anyone you held in the highest regard? And then I'll add this one. How did you feel about Foxen in particular going heads up against him?
I mean, if there was one person at the final table I at least wanted to play heads up, it was certainly Stevie. I think he was the strongest player at this final table. I think specifically heads up, the next two who I would least want to play are probably Igor and Ali. Heads up no limit it's the same game, sort of, but it's pretty different from anything else that you're going to encounter in the course of playing a tournament. And Alex is more of a tournament player, and I don't think he's ever played a bunch of cash heads up or heads up sit and goes or anything like that. Whereas Ali and Igor have some, and I have a good bit. So yeah, I felt like I had a decent edge heads up. Right. I felt like I was better prepared than him.
Is there? I mean, let's draw the parallel with video games, because that might be an easy way to explain it. When you play Madden or FIFA or whatever, players have certain ratings, for shot taking or technique, skill, speed, all that sort of stuff. Is that sort of the same in poker, where heads up, 300, 400, 500, or hold'em, PLO, blah blah blah? You in your mind have this sort of video game-esque view of your opponents.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable way to characterize it. There's just very specific knowledge that doesn't generalize. That is important, heads up. There's just a right way to play pre-flop, heads up, and it's different at every stack size. And some people have memorized it and others haven't.
Right. And in which, drawing the video game parallels, which categories, if you will, would you rate yourself the highest in? Like, what is your strong suit in the game?
I think it's a tricky question. It's changed a good bit over the course of my career too. I think 8-10 years ago, I was really a heads up no limit specialist. That was what I was really good at. I had studied that deeply in the pre-solver era and was a pretty early adopter of solvers, and one of the first people to get really good at playing heads up no limit like a computer. In the time since, that has gotten to be a less valuable skill. There's not that much heads up no limit action these days, and there's a larger group of people who are very, very good at it. And kind of in that time, I think I've used the skills I developed then to become more of a generalist. I am a decent mixed game player now, decent PLO player, decent short deck player. I'm pretty good at a lot of stuff. I don't think I am one of the very best at any one thing. I think I do well in kind of novel and esoteric situations where I can apply my sort of broad and general knowledge to figure things out on the fly. Which is very much the opposite of what I would have considered my strengths like 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I was a specialist. There was a narrow set of things that I was really, really good at. And I did not feel that comfortable in novel situations. And yeah, as I've gotten older and done more different things, I think I am... My strength is more in being able to do a lot of things pretty well.
For the people in the chat that are watching right now, describe your strong suit as a poker player. Just as a little thought experiment, let us know in the chat, what are you the best at? And I'm not saying that you have to be the best at it compared to Isaac Haxton, just from your perspective. What have you studied the most? What have you played the most? What is your strong suit? Heads up, 6-handed, full ring, 13-handed limit hold'em. Just let me know in the chat what you are the best at. And while you're at it, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, become a follower of our Twitch channel if you're watching there, and don't forget to turn on those notifications, because we have a lot of exciting content coming out almost every single day. We just released the biggest hand Tom Dwan ever played on High Stakes Poker, which was on the latest season of the show, season 8, versus Jean-Robert Belland and Lin Ji. That's on our YouTube and our Facebook channel. We also have a weekly top 5 on Wednesday, which has been High Stakes Poker related. We've seen a series of bad beats, aces losing, Tom Dwan hands, all sorts of stuff. There's a lot of good stuff out there. For you, Ike, what are some of the things you still want to accomplish as a poker player? Or what are some of the things you still want to be involved in? Is it maybe being on a show like High Stakes Poker, or certain tournament accomplishments? Like, what do you sort of look for? What drives you?
I've never been that motivated by like very specific and narrow goals. I don't care that much about racking up titles or hitting a certain spot on the all-time money list or total cashes or anything like that. I just kind of want to keep playing the game and keep competing at a high level and taking advantage of the best opportunities that I see. Right now, things are in a little bit of a weird holding pattern, and the main thing I'm doing is just like playing online tournaments on Sundays and taking it easy a lot of the time. But in the hopefully relatively near future, when live poker comes back, the big things on my plate, I think, are high stakes tournaments, particularly like the Triton stuff. The big short deck tournaments are a thing that have taken off in the last couple of years that I really enjoy and that I think are a valuable opportunity. So yeah, high stakes tournaments, including short deck, and mixed games in Vegas, the Bellagio big game. That's the stuff I've been putting my time into, and I plan to continue doing more of that, and I would like to be successful at it. I don't really care very much whether that means some titles or a bunch of third place finishes and piling up some money, or my swaps winning and me bubbling a bunch of shit. And
But you haven't pawned off the super high rollable ring yet.
I have not.
Do you have a trophy case? Do you have a place to display some of your accolades?
I don't, and it would be pretty sad if I did. For a pretty successful tournament career. It's been very short on first place finishes and trophies and titles. Except for this that's about to happen right in front of us here. My other big live tournament wins are like a 1-day 25K in Prague with like 100 players. I don't even know what else.
You mean you no longer have the trophy of your 2K PCA win from 2016?
I don't know where that one is. Or the Venetian Deep Stacks from 2009.
That's a wonderful series. Like for myself as an aspiring player going to Vegas for the first time in 2009, playing a $200 Venetian Deep Stack, I felt as though I was in the WSP main event. That was an incredible experience. By the way, like the first ever tournament I covered at the WSOP was the 40K in 2009.
Oh wow!
Yeah. And of course, I was working for Dutch Poker News, and Lex Veldhuis was at the final table.
Yeah.
And I hated Donnie Stern for a long time. Let's just say that. But he's such a great chef, and
He is.
I've tried some of the food that he makes, so that made up for it. Okay, for everyone in the chat, last chance to get some of your questions in. Let's do a few quick hitters if we have one. One of the quick hitters that I saw, Ike. How do you randomize at the table? Is there a certain thing you do? How do you do it?
If you notice, anytime you see me at the table, I generally have a stack of chips in my right hand that I'm shuffling. And I will shuffle the chips, and then I will cut so there's a chip on top. And I will kind of imagine a clock face on the chip, that there's some distinguishing mark on the chip that is the hand of the clock, and I will glance down at the chip and determine where the hand has fallen in the face of the clock, and kind of number the perimeter of the clock from 0 to 100, and wherever it fell, that is the random number.
There you go. So people, if you want to try that at home in your home games, there you have it. All right. You took down this event for $3.6 million, defeating Alex Foxen. $3.6 million up top. If there's any more questions, please get them in now. We're about to wrap.
Boy, do I look happy.
You are so excited. It is unbelievable. It's almost.
I do look happier than Alex.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. You look about $1.5 million happier. Did you celebrate after this at all?
Yeah. Well, I did a podcast with you right away.
Facts.
And
it's true.
I had a couple of drinks, and then I think I went to dinner with a couple of friends at Bardo. On the subject of food, we had a very sad Arby's reference earlier in the show. Top 3 Vegas restaurants that you would go to celebrate a win. Oh, wow. Kabuto.
Sushi.
Oh, man. It's been so long since I've been to any restaurant. I'm having a difficult time even conceptualizing it.
Lotus, Carbone.
Those are both great.
Vegas. By the way, let me know in the chat.
Raku.
Very good too. Partage.
Never been.
That's what Dominic just said in the chat.
I've heard mixed things, actually. I've heard a lot of good things, and a few people were not very impressed.
I miss Chata Thai. That was...
Yeah, Chata was nice.
Very good. People in the chat, let us know. What's the best place in Vegas to eat?
Yeah, what do I miss?
Have you ever been to Golden Steer?
I have not.
Oh, man, that's an experience.
Driven past it 1,000,000 times.
That is fantastic. I mean,
yeah,
it might not be the best steakhouse in Vegas, but it's the best atmosphere in Vegas, like bar none. I
should really go sometime. Yeah, I ought to know what that's about.
Yeah, no, it's really good, especially if you dive into the history a little bit before going there. It'll all sort of feel like you're stepping 60 years back in time, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that is cool. I do appreciate that kind of thing.
Lots of great suggestions in the chat, mainly on Twitch. KFC, Olive Garden, In-N-Out Burger. Those are all places that I might end up at when I'm 17 beers deep, but not to celebrate a big win.
Yeah, those wouldn't be high on the list.
Here's another question for you. Favorite chess opening?
Favorite chess opening? When I played seriously, which was when I was like 9, I always played I played a lot of the Petrov from Black, or the French, and from White, I really liked the Danish Gambit, which is not a good opening, but if you're playing against kids you're a lot better than and want to be done in less than 10 minutes, getting them to accept all of the pawns in the Danish and beating them in 15 moves is a pretty decent approach.
As a beginner chess player who got caught up in the Queen's Gambit, and now I watch Hikaru basically all day,
Nice.
it is incomprehensible to watch someone like Hikaru talk about chess. It is like I am a pretty decent poker player, and listening to you talk about poker, I can sort of visualize some of the concepts. I can understand where you're going with this, and then I watch Hikaru do a speed run, and I'm before I even understand where he's going with this, he's already won the game. It is on a whole different kind of level. Okay, I'm gonna do 3 more quick ones, and then I'll let you go. Let's see. 1337 KNP says, quick thoughts on Limitless. Is he one of the best?
He's an enigma. He does some things well, for sure. My experience with him is mainly in tournaments, where I would not say he is one of the best. He's clearly a strong player who is trying hard. I think it will be interesting to see how things play out with Limitless. He is young and brash and pretty good, but maybe not as good as he thinks he is.
Confidence is everything.
There are the comparisons to Isildur are natural, though I think he is not that level of
talented, I
reckless
guess.
Or intuitive. I think he studies and approaches poker like a professional, whereas Isildur was just only one speed. All he did was play. He didn't study. He didn't game select. Victor is not quite like that, but it didn't occur to me that they're both named Victor. But
that's true. Safe to assume that Blom, Isildur, one of the most talented poker minds out there, especially when he came up.
He's just a freak. No one else has gotten anywhere near that good at a single game, never mind as many different games as he did, while, as far as I can tell, doing no away from the table work. It was kind of always destined to go badly because he did not game select at all, kind of preferred to play the best players even. And did not practice bankroll management at all either. But yeah, truly one of a kind talent.
Penultimate question from Griffin. Do you find Ivy intimidating?
Yeah, of course. Everybody finds Ivy intimidating.
There's no amount of skill that a person can possess to feel comfortable playing against Phil Ivey.
I mean, I feel comfortable playing against Phil, but he's still intimidating.
He's a legend. Let me pick one more. You know what? We'll call it. I don't see anything more interesting.
All right.
And I think that this has been great. Ike, thank you so much for being on the show. I hope you enjoyed it.
My pleasure.
I'll speak for everyone in the chat that this was a great show. For everyone who's still watching, if you want to watch this entire final table with commentary by Ali Najad and Nick Schulman, you can do so on PokerGo. You can also watch 8 seasons of High Stakes Poker. Yes, the new eighth season is out.
A lot.
It is on PokerGo. You can watch basically 16 years of the World Series of Poker, all on the PokerGo platform, as well as various other events. Super High Roller Cash Game is very interesting if you want something new to watch. There's endless possibilities, so you will not be bored. If you're new to PokerGo, use the promo code HSP to take $20 off the annual subscription. And if you want some cool merch, we have shot glasses, beer glasses, hats, stickers, coasters, whatever you want to find for your poker friends, for your dad, for your mom, or for yourself. PokerGoshop.com. That's where you can find all that stuff. Use the promo code REMKO, REMKO, for 10% off your total purchase. So that should be something that you cannot miss. And then I just hope that during 2021, things will return to somewhat of normalcy and we can see you again inside the PokerGo studio for some high-stakes action.
I am looking forward to it, believe me.
I will predict, and this is not really a hot take, but sort of maybe, when everyone's vaccinated and when things are back to normal, I think high-stakes tournaments are going to be going absolutely bananas.
I think so. And I think everybody is going to be having a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it.
It's going to be fun. Ike, thanks so much. Once again, you guys at home, thanks so much for watching. On your way out, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel. I'll be back Thursday night, 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern. Brent and Jeff, No Gamble, No Future, Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. They're going to have Phil Hellmuth on the show. They're going to talk Super Bowl. They're going to talk bets and odds and how they torched money. That's just what they do. I'll be here for the serious conversations. Thank you guys all so much for watching. This was Run It Back.